Ladies and gentlemen, it is an absolute honor and a privilege to introduce Firdaus Kharas, the first Zoroastrian officer of the Order of Canada. Firdaus Kharas is a social innovator, author, speaker, media creator, and above all, a humanitarian. He has been credited with saving and influencing millions of lives. He is a pioneer and global leader in using animation for social change. He founded Chocolate Mousse Media, a social enterprise, in 1995. And now, over 1 billion people in 198 countries have been positively influenced by his work, which covers a wide range of topics on human rights, disease prevention, health, refugees, violence reduction, and nature. A fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, named one of the world's 50 most talented social innovators, and awarded 3 honorary doctorates: the prestigious Peabody Award, the United Nations Peace Medal, Humanitarian Outstanding Achievement Award, plus more than 125 international recognitions. I could go on and on. In addition to honorary doctorates, he has degrees and certificates from 8 universities, including Harvard, Stanford, the London School of Economics, besides many, many more. He is the author of the book, Creativity, The Key to a Remarkable Life. Several academic papers at the doctorate and master levels have included references to his work. Wishing only to positively influence viewers, Firdaus Kharas distributes his work free of charge globally. He is quoted to have said, "I'm just trying to make a small contribution." Firdaus's work transcends borders, languages, and cultures, proving that purpose-driven storytelling can spark real change. In his powerful keynote address, Firdaus will share 12 impactful takeaways from his extraordinary journey. Expect eye-opening insights, inspiring anecdotes, and practical lessons on how each of us can shape a better world. Ladies and gentlemen, the first Zoroastrian officer of the Order of Canada, Firdaus Kharas.
Good morning. Thank you very much for that very kind and generous introduction, Dilnawaz. I am absolutely delighted to be here. I think out of the hundreds, if not a few thousand speeches I've given in North America, this is probably the first time I'm in a room where everybody can pronounce my name correctly. So, esteemed members of the World Zoroastrian Chamber of Commerce, ladies and gentlemen, today I'm offering 12 practical takeaways from my journey from the beginning to today. So, takeaway number 1, dance with life's unpredictability. My journey has taken me from India to the United States, to Canada, to Switzerland, and back to Canada. I was born in Calcutta into a relatively small Parsi community. I think everybody knew each other in Calcutta. Moved to Bombay when I was 12 and left India at 17 after attending Cathedral High School in Bombay. If you don't mind, I'm using the names of the cities as they were when I was there. I knew no one in North America when I arrived at the age of 17. no family or connections, just a young person with a big dream. Life is not a straight line. I zigged and zagged and often fell over my own feet. Yet I knew what I wanted to accomplish from a very early age. I knew that I did not want to pore over accounts or carry a stethoscope, at least in those days, occupations much loved by Parsi community, Parsi parents. Money was not my driver either. I have always believed that money is an enabler, not an end by itself. If you want to become or are a billionaire, I salute you and several of my childhood friends who are today self-made billionaires. You've climbed a mountain I have fallen off several times. I was a very curious person. I wanted to explore and learn about the world. The one prediction from my friends will tell you from Bombay is that I said I wanted to visit 100 countries in the world. As of today, I have had the pleasure of visiting 146 countries in every corner of the world. Above all else, I wanted to have an impact. That I could have told you in India before I left. So don't map out every stage of your life. Don't worry if things don't work out exactly the way you want. Expect some failures and some pain. Don't fear the detours. They are part of your dance with life's unpredictability. Number two, takeaway number two, leap outside comfort. How did I get here? I always blame Mother Teresa. My mother was a British-trained solicitor, but she never practiced law in India. Instead, she was a volunteer head of a national charity. When I was quite small, perhaps 8 years old, I was taken to meet Mother Teresa by my mother. I went several times and did minor chores. Mother Teresa was then unknown outside of Calcutta. No Peace Prize, no paparazzi yet. The image of Mother Teresa working in a huge room with the poorest of the poor dying on cots is still etched in my mind as if it were just yesterday. Of course, as a wide-eyed 8-year-old, I didn't realize that those early encounters with Mother Teresa and her colleagues in white saris would make an everlasting impact on me. Looking back today, I know I grasped then the importance of living and working outside of one's comfort zone for the benefit of others. I met my first refugee in Calcutta during the 1965 India-Pakistan War. My mother took me to the train station several times while she attended to the arriving refugees. As you will hear, refugees would weave through my life. Later, as a student in Bombay, my best friend and I set up a makeshift school in a slum, which we taught every Saturday to whomever attended. Our school wasn't very far physically from the slum, but was light years away in every other aspect. Cathedral School didn't just teach me about history and geography, which I loved, math, which I hated, and Hindi, which I almost flunked, but I acted, debated, and won elocutions, public speaking contests. Those skills I still carry today, especially when I have to talk myself out of trouble in some obscure country. Above all else, I made lifelong friends there. Today, I still have friends from grade 3 onwards. We've been WhatsApping long before it has been cool to WhatsApp. Such long-lasting relationships with your spouse, your children, your friends are critical elements of happiness. I am not a believer, like some psychologists, that the person you become in life is governed by what happened in your youth. But I do not entirely separate whom I became from what happened in my youth. If you're a young person today, you might not fully realize yet the impact your early socialization has had on you. Takeaway number 3, grab life-changing opportunities. From India, I landed in rural Pennsylvania as an exchange student. I was the first exchange student from the main Rotary Club of Bombay. After having studied at Cathedral, I found high school in the US to be ludicrously easy. It allowed me to get away in winter, to be taken by a Rotarian to a ski hill every Wednesday. Some of you might understand when I say I look like a confused flamingo on spindly legs, having come from the heat of the tropics and trying to ski. I still dislike Ottawa's extreme cold. That year as an exchange student taught me to embrace different cultures. I went on a tour of the US. We went literally to every part of the continental US on 4 buses for over a month. That trip around the US with dozens of people from around the country, from every corner of the world, did open my eyes for the first time to the possibilities of bridging cultural, linguistic, religious, and ethnic divides. I stayed in Pennsylvania and attended a small liberal arts college called Thiel College. I thrived there. I graduated with high honors. I was elected the student government president. I won the National Model United Nations Debating Championship, which was held, I'm not sure if it still is, every year in New York at the UN. But life was not easy. I was desperately poor at Thiel, despite having several scholarships, and I could not afford the full tuition and living costs. I struggled to make ends meet. I took a job in the university cafeteria as a dishwasher just so that I could eat while nobody was looking. The staff was so concerned that I had nothing for the winter, no coat or boot or hats or scarves, that they organized drives for donated clothes for me. In my first year, I couldn't afford to live on campus, so I stayed with a family some 5 kilometers away from the campus and had to walk between the two quite often, even in winter. I'd come to Carleton, to Canada, to attend Carleton University before I graduated from Thiel College on a scholarship to attend something called the Canadian School of Peace Research, which was held over a few weeks in the summer. As I was leaving the classroom one day, the director of the Graduate School of International Affairs at Carleton University asked me where I was going to go to graduate school. I had planned to go to something called the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, which at the time was run by Tufts and Harvard universities in Massachusetts. He asked me if I had a full scholarship. I said, sadly, I did not. On the spot, he said to me, apply to Carleton, we'll give you a full scholarship. That 2-minute conversation changed my life. I came to Canada. After interning at the United Nations Information Center in Washington, D.C., and at the House of Representatives in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, I came to Canada to do my graduate studies. My advice to you is to stay open to unexpected opportunities and challenges. They can sneak up on you and shape your future in profound ways. There are always challenges, no matter what stage in life you're at. It might sound like a cliche to say that challenges make you a better person, but it is true. Not that challenges are fun while you're going through them. I can tell you it's no fun not knowing where next week's meals are coming from, or walking in blinding snow without adequate warm clothing. Today, I have too many winter coats, hats, scarves, and gloves, and you know why. Number 4, know your core. My research at Carleton University wasn't just about drafting a legal document. It was much broader, to focus on the reasons to have an international convention against the use of torture, to further the notion that people everywhere matter, that they have fundamental rights as human beings, and that they can expect assistance when they're abused. I have always believed that our shared commonalities as human beings affirm that we will not tolerate injustice, that if we can save the life of a child, we should, that if we have the ability to bring somebody out of the crushing burden of poverty and scarcity, that is our duty, and that if we have the talent to effect change for the better, we must use it. Beyond duty, beyond obligation, there is something deeper, a recognition that our lives are interconnected, that what happens to one of us happens to all of us. To me, compassion is not a weakness, but a strength, and empathy is not an abstract ideal, but a force that drives meaningful action. Human dignity and the protection of human life should not be aspirations, but expectations in a world that values humanity. My beliefs are mine alone. You may or may not agree with them. You must have your own beliefs based on your own values. You must truly know yourself. And in knowing yourself, you will find your own path, the one that aligns with your principles, your convictions, and your sense of purpose. Takeaway number 5, dump others' expectations. After Carleton University, I decided to immigrate to Canada, as I had entered Canada on a student visa. That was easier said than done. In the year that I did immigrate, Canada took only 84,000 people in all categories: family, class, immigrant, and refugees. Today, Canada takes about 500,000 people a year as immigrants. I had to set up my own company and prove to an immigration officer that I could support myself. I had 3 years of uncertainty. Those were not easy times, but I was determined to stay in Canada, so determined to stay in Canada that I actually wrote a best-selling manual on how to immigrate to Canada while I was immigrating myself. Almost immediately afterwards, I was appointed executive director, the head of the staff of the United Nations Association in Canada. If you don't know what that is, it is a national non-governmental organization composed of Canadians from coast to coast who support the United Nations and all that it stands for. Suddenly, I was dealing and traveling with ministers and ambassadors. I even discussed international affairs with the then Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau several times. After I had immigrated, I had to learn about Canada and undertake the citizenship test. I was asked at the beginning of the interview with the citizenship judge if I could name the Governor General of Canada. I blurted out, "Oh, that's Jean Sauvé. I had dinner with her last Thursday." We had a nice little chat after that. I passed. That was fortunate because soon after, I was the Canadian delegate to the 40th anniversary of the United Nations. I sat in the UN General Assembly behind the placard that said Canada, and remember that I had just immigrated and become a citizen just recently. There are not many countries where that might happen. I'll tell you a little story. Rajiv Gandhi was then the Prime Minister of India, and he came over to Canada's seat because he wanted to give a message to the Canadian Prime Minister. I told him I was a Parsi, and that got a very confused conversation with Mr. Gandhi. I had a lot of hair and a full black beard then. I have official photographs from there, so I can prove it. I was always the youngest person in the room by far. The ambassadors I dealt with were the age of my father. Youth didn't dim my voice. I was well prepared. I knew and still know the United Nations system extremely well. I have been on the periphery of the UN since I won that Model UN debate at the age of 21. I have always been a very strong supporter of Canada's place in the world and of the importance of multilateralism. My deep interest in international affairs has not waned throughout my life. The lesson here is that determination and preparation can turn challenges into opportunities. Confidence, knowledge, and resilience are what matter, not your religion or your looks or even your age. Takeaway number 6, walk towards the difficult. I resigned from the UNAC exactly to the day after 5 years. The next job was extremely fascinating. I was asked by the senior minister of immigration, there were 2 ministers at that time, by the senior minister of immigration to be her policy advisor on immigration and refugee issues. Now, remember, I was a very recent immigrant myself. Again, there are not many countries in the world where that would happen. I assisted the minister to establish a new refugee system, which exists to this day. It is called the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada. I also advised the minister on individual cases whose files went to her. I'm going to leave my script for a minute and tell you a story. A file came to the minister's office, and the minister said to me, "Firdaus, just phone the visa officer and work it out, and whatever he decides, fine." So I phoned on an unpublic, classified phone number to the Canadian Embassy overseas. And in those days, somebody actually answered the phone. The receptionist at the immigration section answered the phone, and the conversation went something like this. "This is me, this is her. Hello, may I speak to Mr. XYZ visa officer? Oh, he's very busy, he doesn't take calls. This is the minister's policy advisor phoning. I'm sure if you told him who's on the phone, he's going to take the call. Who are you? The minister's policy advisor. Which minister? The Minister of Immigration in Ottawa. What's your name? Firdaus Kharas. How do you spell it? Firdaus. And this is what she said. Do you mean to tell me that the minister has a policy advisor named Firdaus Kharas? I don't believe it. And she put down the phone. I like telling that story because it shows you how far we've come as a country. Canada's refugee system had collapsed due to a decision by the Supreme Court that all refugee claimants in Canada had to have an oral hearing before a decision maker. Therefore, it was a time when refugee issues were very much in the news. Canada had developed a backlog of some 128,000 claimants from 115 countries. Some things never change, by the way. Today, there is a backlog of nearly 300,000 claimants before the Immigration and Refugee Board. The Cabinet decided what to do with the backlog. I was then appointed by the Cabinet as head of what is called the Backlog Subdivision at the IRB. I had 50 board members under me from coast to coast who made decisions on claimants appearing before them. Again, I was the youngest person in the room, even though I was the head. I did that for 5 years, first as Assistant Deputy Chairman in charge of what was called the Backlog Subdivision, and then after the backlog was cleared, as the head of the Ottawa Atlantic Division of the IRB. I had a fixed 5-year appointment. I have a big piece of paper signed by the Governor General in my office. It is called an order in council that made my appointment. So I knew the day I started when I would end. So I had to leave after 5 years. It was the last time I received a regular paycheck. Those were very public times. When I decided to hold a public meeting in Toronto to explain what would happen to refugee claimants in the backlog, some 2,000 people showed up. I think not many people at those meetings agreed with the decision taken by the Cabinet not to let everybody automatically stay in Canada, except for the Speaker, me. I believed and still believe it was the right decision by the Cabinet. History is replete with ideas and people who were derided and opposed. At the end of 1999, Time magazine decided who would be the person of the century. It was Albert Einstein. It was not a controversial decision because today we know he changed our understanding of science and of the universe. But during his time, he and his science were controversial. There was even a group of scientists who called his theory of relativity a hoax. Controversy doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. My takeaway here is don't shy away from something just because it is difficult or controversial. The difficult can occur at any time of your life. The hard fights are sometimes the ones most worth fighting for. Takeaway number 7, be ambitious in whatever you want to do. What came next is what I have done for the last 30 years and still do today. I have dedicated my career to making an impact on the world through the power of media. My logline is that I create media to better the human condition. At its core, it's a public service to improve and save lives. It has not been a job, it has been a passion. I have a list of criteria to determine which projects I am going to take on, but there is one overarching criterion I use. Is this going to save or better one life? That's all I need, one life. My company is called Chocolate Mousse Media. I once wrote that I was a closet chocoholic. My friends quickly pointed out that my love for chocolate is quite out in the open and not in any closet. The mousse is the Canadian animal, not the dessert. I've had a home office from the beginning and have no staff, not even an assistant. When I told people 30 years ago I was going to start what I called a hybrid company, using proceeds from for-profit work, media work, to fund non-profit media for social change, and that I was going to give away my work for free. More than one accountant and international affairs expert gave me a highly quizzical look. They doubted the viability of a business model that combined making a living with giving away your work for free. Today, a company like mine, you probably know, is called a social enterprise, and I only create media to better the human condition. No matter where we are, we can inspire and motivate each other. Information and technology are changing the way we think and do. 30 years ago, when I started my work in using mass communications to make a change in the world, we were only able to receive information passively through television and radio. Today, we are at a new point in human history. I did see what was coming, and that new point has opened up endless opportunities. It is an age of global, instant, widespread, personal, two-way communications, assuming the government allows it, which is why I say to you, in my opinion, the world has become and is becoming a smaller place. In September last year, I announced that I had created or co-created my 5,000th production for social change. They exist in hundreds of languages, from Amharic to Z Zulu. And to the best of my knowledge, as Dilnavaz mentioned, has been seen by over 100, has been seen in 198 countries by over 1 billion people. They are on over 100 topics, from anti-racism to Zika prevention. I'm best known for animated shorts on health. I'm going to show you one of them. If any of you are interested in my work, please come and see me later and we can discuss it. I have always known what I wanted to achieve is highly ambitious, bordering on the impossible. This has not been a deterrent, but an inspiration. Ambition isn't arrogance, it's fuel. I have never understood why ambition is sometimes perceived as a negative trait. If you ever find yourself doubting whether one person can make a difference in the world, remember that every movement, every great change in history began with somebody who refused to accept the way it was and instead imagined the way it could be. So that is ambition, so please be ambitious. Takeaway number 8, banish the word impossible. I am immersed in creativity. What is creativity? There are many definitions in my book, and some of you will be receiving it. In my book, I define creativity as follows. Creativity is the ability to think differently by a mental process of original thoughts that results in the creation of new ideas. So it's a mental process. You can't see creativity. You might see the product of creativity, but you can't see creativity. It's in your head. Perhaps the best known media I have ever created or co-created was on preventing the spread of HIV/AIDS. It is called The Three Amigos and consists of 3 funny animated condoms. Over 20 million people, let that sink in. Over 20 million people died of HIV/AIDS. Most of them were Africans. The videos today exist in 45 languages, so over 80% of the world's population can see them in their own language. The series was used during the height of the HIV crisis in over 150 countries, including in Canada and in India, and especially in South Africa, on national television. When I told people I intended to use humor and animation to try to prevent the spread of HIV/AIDS on a global basis, nobody thought it was possible. No one gave me a cent to produce it. To me, the word impossible is a dare to prove that it is possible. So I went ahead with over 400 volunteers to create the series. The 400 believed when the so-called experts did not. It was extremely successful. The series became famous in South Africa, which is where we started. At that time, 3.8 million people were dying of HIV/AIDS in South Africa. There were no retroviral drugs available then. The series was played on national television for 2 years, up to 20 times a day, in 4 national languages. Was viewed by students in every university in the country, was played in bus stops and on jumbotrons, in stadiums at halftime, and in many other places. We saturated South Africa with 3 goofy, funny, talking condoms. As a result, we know we drove up condom sales massively. I ascribe part of that success to the wonderful support I received from the late, great Archbishop Desmond Tutu. I'm sure most of you know who he is, but if you don't know who he is, he was one of the pillars of the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. He won the Nobel Peace Prize. I have called him the most complete human being I have ever met. He was also one of the funniest people I have ever met. Tutu's laugh blessed what I dared. I cherish every moment of every conversation I had the privilege of having with him. Over 95% of my work does not carry a copyright notice. Anyone can download and use any of my work as they wish. This open access model has been implemented since when I was started in 1995. There are over 3,600 videos on my Vimeo channel and hundreds of others on sponsor sites. My work nowadays is called social and behavior change communications. When I started 30 years ago, there was no descriptive term. I create 2 kinds of videos. The first is where I'm trying to get the viewer directly to change their behavior. I do that by creating what we call cognitive dissonance in people's heads. The second I call a catalyst video. The idea is to get a discussion going, and it is the discussion and not the video itself that creates the behavior change. Although my work has been seen by hundreds of millions of people all over the world, almost nobody, even in Canada, knows that I have created the media I have. None of my short-form animations carry my company's name or my name. What about impact? Occasionally we can measure it or not. There have been graduate students and journalists have examined my work. The people on the ground who use my work, such as governments and non-governmental organizations, receive the most feedback because they're on the ground. Social media gathers hundreds of comments usually when we post a video on social platforms. And broadcasters have found it worthwhile to give me hundreds of millions of dollars worth of free airtime. There have been many articles and several graduate papers written around the world, as was mentioned, in several languages on my work. On the 3 amigos, to continue with that example, a published article which followed a 2-year investigation by the journalist said, and I'm going to quote this directly, Firdaus Kharas used condoms to shift global attitudes about HIV/AIDS and saved millions of lives in the process. End of quote. I am very grateful for anyone's interest in my work and for their generous conclusions, but I have never used any numbers. All I do say is that maybe my work has contributed to saving lives, but the true extent to which I do not know. This is an attribute of my work, because I give away my work for free and ask for nothing, not even an email address. I do not know the extent to which my work has been used. I have no way of knowing precisely where or when my work has been used. That is by design, and it is fine by me. I'm going to give you some examples of impact. I worked with UNICEF in the country of Myanmar, used to be called Burma, to create a series of videos on maternal and infant health. I went to Myanmar several times and visited many parts of the country, including Rakhine province, where the Rohingya come from. We knew that about 35,000 infants died in the first 100 days of life, and about 3,000 women died at childbirth. Our goal, which would have been measurable because the central government kept statistics on mortality for the whole country, was to halve the number of deaths. We intended to save 19,000 lives in a year. It was a very concrete goal. The videos were played on national television and were distributed to every doctor, nurse, and healthcare worker dealing with pregnant women and infants. And then a coup d'etat happened in that country, and that beautiful country has descended into chaos. My work often takes on a life of its own. I had created a video in several languages to deal with the after effects of rape. It is a young boy pleading with his father not to mistreat his wife and his mother because they had been raped. They had done nothing wrong. It was for the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the DRC, which has one of the highest per capita, highest number of rapes in the world. Then some women started watching it by their thousands. Then some women took the video to neighboring countries like Uganda. And then some very wonderful women took it to the northern regions of Nigeria, where a murderous organization called Boko Haram has been kidnapping girls. I found out only because I was asked to create a version in Hausa, the local language of northern Nigeria. Then somebody wrote an article, and that was the first time I learned that some very brave women were taking the video from school to school into classrooms to get girls to talk about the possibility and after effects of rape. Other times I find out by accident. You might recall the Ebola crisis in West Africa. Estimates were made that over 1 million Africans would get the Ebola virus and die. There was no vaccine at the time. The international community, including Canada, sent doctors and nurses and tents to deal with people who had the Ebola virus. I, on the other hand, put all my efforts into preventing people from getting the Ebola virus in the first place. Collectively, we stopped the Ebola virus in West Africa with approximately 11,500 deaths. After the crisis was over, I was sitting in an international meeting at the UN on the lessons learned. The country head of one of the main doctors' organizations said, "We were lost." Then this video arrived. I immediately bought 2,000 phones, put the video on it, and sent it across the country. After she spoke, I went up to her and asked her to describe the video in case it wasn't a video I'd created in 17 languages. When we found out it was, I got a big hug. So I say to you, reach for the difficult and different. If people are skeptical about your idea, that should prove to you that your idea is new, unusual, and novel. There will always be people that are skeptical about everything new. People only know the status quo. Henry Ford apparently said, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And Steve Jobs did say, and I quote him, a lot of times people don't know don't know what they want until you show it to them. I'm now going to show you, because there's a lot of words, so I'm now going to show you the video on Ebola. Now, I want you to take yourself out of Toronto. Put yourself in a village in Africa where people all around you are currently dying of Ebola. This video is being currently used. This has been made some years ago. It's one of my longest videos. It's 4 minutes. My videos are usually quite short, and this does not use humor. But the reason I'm showing it to you is that today there is an Ebola outbreak in Uganda, and I have made this video available to Uganda. So I hope you enjoy it.
My dearest family, because you love me, I need you to stop, think, and listen. I am sick because this disease called Ebola lives inside me. This Ebola is not a curse. Ebola is a virus. Father, please tell others and save them. I'm sorry, Mama, for causing you this much pain. I know this could have been prevented. If only I had heeded the warnings and not have exposed myself to the virus. No matter what people say, tradition kills and superstitious ways have no power to stop this Ebola. Father, our family's only hope is my isolation. Do not touch my skin, blood, my sweat, my saliva, and my soul close, because I have the Ebola. Oh, Mama, I feel your loving eyes gazing at me. I feel the mighty love you have for me. I know you yearn to hold and care for me, to bathe your child in the cool shade of our home. But because you love me, Mama, I need you to be stronger than your tears. Support the scientists and the medical staff. They are our only hope. These are good people from around the world. They did not bring this sickness to us. They are risking their lives to help us defeat the virus and live. We put the illness, whenever it surfaces, to the experts. Honor me, brother, in this way, as I would do the same for you. And if I should lose this battle, honor me with a good burial, but make sure nobody touches my body. Father, do not allow greed to turn against wisdom. Brother, save our family's future. Sister, sing not of my suffering, sing of my courage. The courage of Mama gave us all. I know what I ask of you is the hardest thing you will ever do. That you respect my wishes. Fill me with massive pride.
Thank you. Takeaway number 9, recognize our shared humanity. Doctors tell us that our fingerprints and irises are unique. I believe the way we think, the way we communicate is unique as well. No two human beings are so similar that they receive, send, and interpret communications in exactly the same way. I have developed a list of 54 items I called influences to the way we make, receive, and interpret communications. We all have all 54 influences in our brains at all time. They create a lens through which we view life, a lens as distinct as our fingerprints. My work rests on a deeply held belief that we can meaningfully communicate with each other despite the many influences that separate us as human beings, languages and cultures, tribes and ethnicities, geographies and borders, beliefs, customs and social norms, religions and moral stereotypes and intolerances. I'm going to give you an example. I don't know how many times I've been asked where I'm from. I usually tease the questioner by saying, the West End of Ottawa. But if I say India, the instinctive, stereotypical response always is, but you don't look Indian. I don't want it to sound easy to communicate on a global basis. It is hard, very hard. And there is a high degree of risk of causing unintended consequences and offense. So how do I get around these influences? I rely on the fact that underneath such differences, humans are humans everywhere. For example, in creating a global series on malaria prevention, I know that I can appeal to the common value that no mother or father, no matter their religion or culture, no matter their language or citizenship, wants their child to get a preventable disease and die. We have forgotten the commonalities that we have as a species and have instead accentuated the differences like religion and culture. Modern communications can greatly assist us to bridge our differences, creating knowledge and understanding of each other, and I hope someday returning us to the concept of one human family. Our unique ways of thinking are the very elements that can spark change. It is through the recognition and respect of our individual uniqueness that we can foster an environment where every voice matters. This is how we can create a world where our varied experiences come together to form a singular, powerful narrative, one of unity as a species. Our shared humanity is our greatest strength, and we must use it. Number 10, takeaway number 10, choose creativity over optimism. Choose creativity, and optimism over fear. It is easy to look at the daily headlines and feel despair, especially nowadays. However, if you meet the countless individuals I have met working to improve the world, you will find hope. I have seen ordinary people take extraordinary action against incalculable odds. I have met and worked with kings and paupers, people with great power and people with no power at all. How much power a person has does not illuminate their character. The people we usually call powerful are not my heroes. I think of an elderly man in a white beard who came to learn in a classroom for the first time in our makeshift school in the slum in Bombay. I remember my visit to Maasai women in the Rift Valley in Kenya, where we're now going to have a chapter apparently, in Kenya, who took me into their huts to show me their ceilings, which was literally dripping with black soot. I recall my conversation with a Colombian girl when I was at the border region between Colombia and Ecuador, who had just crossed into Ecuador to escape rape by drug lords. I marvel at a trafficked child I met in Bangladesh who had been returned from the Middle East after being a child camel jockey who was searching tirelessly for parents he never knew. I am grateful for the advice of women who set up a shelter in the eastern part of the Congo to care for women who had been abused. After talking to victims of acid violence, I felt heartbroken that I could not help in preventing those vile acts because I could not figure out how to prevent acid violence without publicizing acid violence. And I know and acknowledge the great courage of the head of a very well-watched broadcaster who repeatedly played my videos for 2 years on values like gender equality between boys and girls and accepting other cultures in Arabic in the Middle East directly to over 150 million households. There are many others. All these people informed media I created. I learned a great deal from them. They are resilient and determined individuals who refuse to accept their circumstances. They know the value of human dignity. They are my heroes. I once asked Desmond Tutu, after you have 100 honorary doctorates, why do you need the 101st? He said, I only have my voice. The 101st amplifies my voice as much as the first. That is true. You don't need to be the head of a government or be a billionaire to be powerful, although there might be. Just look down the list of Nobel Peace Laureates, and you will find many people who do not command armies and don't have billions of dollars. We now live in a world fueled by angst and fear, in a world that is increasingly fracturing, not just between countries, but within countries as well. Politicians are being elected because they're against everything, not because they're for something. Creating divisions and tensions has become the mainstream. I'm sure you know the many crises that we all face. Human beings instinctively respond to threats with alarms and defensive measures, which in our ancient evolutionary past had obvious advantages. However, in stark contrast, today's hostile, nationalistic rhetoric and diminishing international cooperation create turbulent geopolitical waters and worsen crises. Our future depends on the wisdom of our choices. Our focus on dangers and threats blind us to the potential for a transformational moment of hope and opportunity. We must choose wisely, shifting from self-protective responses that will inevitably be self-defeating to collaborative problem-solving and a future of shared thriving. Our collective strength lies in our ability to see not just the distinctions, but also the profound commonalities that bind us as human beings. Time and time again, people everywhere have shown that human beings, despite our many differences, have the capacity to unite in powerful ways. when our deepest shared values and emotions through which we experience and express those values are triggered. Examples are endless, from our common horror at a tsunami in Japan, or our shared concern for teenagers trapped in a Thai cave, or our joy when everybody walks away from an overturned plane here in Toronto. Although I've seen and dealt with some of humanity's darkest activities, spoken with men and women who have undergone unspeakable acts of violence, sat with mothers and fathers who have endured the unbearable pain of watching their child needlessly die, and I have received death threats for my own work, I remain fundamentally hopeful over the long run. That is not to say I'm blind to the realities of what is happening today. I know the world as it exists and see enormous problems. I'm not naive. One does not walk in 146 countries without seeing human suffering on both personal and collective levels. Many of you as business leaders understandably might not be feeling hopeful today. So why am I hopeful? Knowing the world's problems profoundly is essential for true optimism because it binds that optimism in reality rather than wishful thinking. Informed optimism recognizes difficulties but believes in solutions. It is only when we understand the problems that we can take meaningful action, support effective change, and contribute to progress. True optimists don't just hope for a better future, they act towards creating a better future. Fear paralyzes, hope acts. I act, therefore I remain hopeful. Takeaway number 11. I'm coming to the end, don't worry. Wield your gifts, whatever your skills in art, science, or business, use them for the benefit of others. You have the ability to shape a better world. Believe in the power of small actions. I'm not asking you to be me, taking on national or global challenges. Every little change does not come always in grand gestures. The way we deal with our friends and families, the stories we tell, the actions we take, and even what we share on social media all contribute to a larger cultural shift. The smallest act of kindness and advocacy can ripple outwards. If you're starting a company today, make sure your plan includes more than driving profits. If you are already the owner of a company or leader of a company, I'm sure you already have some way of helping others. Now is the time to step up your charitable activities. Since the beginning of this year, over $100 billion of aid has been cut off by governments. In some cases, that includes both foreign and domestic programs. I am a victim of that cutoff as well. As governments pull apart from each other, businesses can act as a vehicle for stability and cooperation. I'm not suggesting that every company needs to be a social enterprise like mine, but I am suggesting that Jamshedji Tata, who set up a charitable trust in 1892, is still our example even today. He invented corporate generosity. And number 12, finally, build a future of shared responsibility based on who we are. My last takeaway is based on our ethos as Parsis. I'm no Zoroastrian scholar. Indeed, when I had my Navjot, to be honest, I didn't understand a word of the prayers. There were no English translations available then. But since then, I've read a little. For all of us as Parsis, Zoroastria's belief in humanity's inherent capacity for goodness serves as a source of inspiration. His vision of us as a species, uniting to advance truth and righteousness, aligns with a modern message of fostering meaningful action to tackle local and global challenges. His philosophy asserts that human beings are not mere bystanders, but active participants in shaping a better world. His visions of us as a species uniting to advance truth and righteousness, aligns with a modern mission of fostering meaningful action. We are bound by the triad: good thoughts, good words, good deeds. This triad serves as a guide, showing us that meaningful change requires both wisdom and purposeful action. This triad has never been more relevant or necessary than today. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we meet at this moment in history, let us embrace the boundless potential within each of us to weave a tapestry of hope for all humanity. Let us dance boldly with life's unpredictability, leap beyond our comforts, and wield our unique gifts to build a future where no dream is too ambitious, no challenge too daunting, and no heart too distant to touch. Inspired by the wisdom of our past and fueled by the creativity of our present, we are not merely inheritors of a history, culture, and religion. We are architects of a world yet to come. Our journey through life is ours to shape. With good thoughts, good words, and good deeds, let us rise together, proving that the power to transform lives, to heal our fractured world, and to spread human dignity resides in every thought we have, every word we speak, and every hand we extend. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much.